Joe O'Brien also abstained on the final vote on the government's residential tenancies bill. Deputy Horrigan says she has significant concerns about the legislation and its impact on vulnerable families. The bill extends the ban on evictions and rent increases until January for some people who've lost parts of their income because of COVID-19. Lastly, Barack Obama has criticised Donald Trump's suggestion of a delay to November's US election. In a tweet, the president claims an increase in postal voting could lead to fraud. His predecessors hinted that the tweet was posted for the US government's own agenda.
There are those in power who are doing their darndest to discourage people from voting by closing polling locations, even undermining the postal service in the run-up to an election that's going to be dependent on mail-in ballots so people don't get sick.
That's your news update at 9:02.
News Talk Weather.
Thanks to the AA. For great value home insurance, go online to the aa.ie.
Dry tonight with clear spells, but rain will move in over the western half of the country overnight. Some heavy spells are likely with a chance of spot flooding. Mild with lows of 14 to 16 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Football Show on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power. We love the beautiful game more than Olivier Giroud loves the near post. Gamble responsibly. See dunlewy.net.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play for my country again.
Do it then.
What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it? Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
All right, it's Thursday night's football show. We'll check in with Dan McDonnell for some of the stories of the day in just a little while. One of those could well be the playoff semi-final, where Cardiff City have gone back in front against Fulham this evening at Craven Cottage. Lee Tomlin had scored early in the second half, so Cardiff 2-1 up on the night, but Fulham still leading by 3-2 on aggregate. There's nearly 10 minutes gone in the second half there. Of course, these two sides playing for the right to play Brentford in the playoff final on Monday. So it promises to be the usual at this stage, dramatic finish to the playoff semi-final. Now, League of Ireland season is back tomorrow evening. Finally, football is returning, but not as we knew it previously. Obviously, I'm delighted to be joined on the line by Stephen O'Donnell, manager of St. Patrick's Athletic. How are you keeping, Stephen?
It's not bad. How are you?
Yeah, very well. It's been a crazy few months for you, no doubt, from when this first broke, your first full season as manager of St. Patrick's Athletic. You got 4 games in, and then the world is turned upside down, both in a footballing sense and I guess as well very much in a personal sense. I know you've just had a kid last year, you're just starting out in management, you're still a young guy, and suddenly you find yourselves, along with the rest of the St. Pat's players, being temporarily laid off. I'd imagine it was quite a shock to the system in March.
Yeah, obviously, when you come back in January for pre-season, you're looking forward to a full calendar ahead of you. Little did we know that any of us know what was going to be ahead of us come March time. So, I think it's just, the whole world had to deal with something, hopefully once in a lifetime type thing. But as you said, first year in management's been interesting, that's for sure. If anything, it probably our lads, our players and staff and everybody, I suppose would probably appreciate it a little bit more when it is back. Like, we're looking forward to tomorrow probably like never before, because as you said a couple of months ago, this seems far, far away and it looked like a restart was very unlikely.
How did you deal with it? Because as a manager, you have to look after your players and the impact on them. And while it was a temporary measure laying off the players because there was simply no money coming into the club, so you have to focus on them. But also you have to think of yourself and your own mental health and your own personal health and how you deal with this and how your family deal with this. How did you cope with those initial first few weeks?
To be honest, my main cause of concerns probably was the players and that, their whole sort of world had been turned upside down. It was just the uncertainty. We were doing Zoom meetings, but we were meetings. I couldn't give them any clarity on when we'd be back or what was the story, what was the update, because ultimately nobody knew. There was so much uncertainty, no one could plan. And the players were probably looking at you for a little bit of hope and a little bit of assurance, and that you couldn't give. Ultimately, you'd be going on Zoom just to check in with boys, with the whole squad, and then probably they're getting off, and maybe half an hour later, none the clearer, none the wiser of where they stood and what their futures held. So
that must be really difficult, because you say you can't give them assurances, and these are players with a lot of hopes, a lot of ambitions as to where they'd like to go in the game. And as a manager at the start of the season, when you came in January, I'm sure you outlined what your ambitions for them were and how you felt you would achieve them. That this was something totally out of their hands, and you're this major figure in their life, and you can't even give them any guarantees.
Exactly, I suppose, especially the younger players, they were probably staring down the barrel maybe of a year of development in their football, in their profession, gone down the drain and not playing any football. So that was a big fear. I felt a bit helpless. I felt as if you're probably not giving them any assurances, and you want to be there for them. We did say, if any issues, ring me day or night, text me day or night. If anything is sort of worrying you, you want to get something off your chest, you want to speak about something. But it was real tough because the goalposts were changing and were moving probably every day. And, there was a spell there where it did look like that football was the furthest thing away, especially League of Ireland restart. But thankfully, we've got back to some little bit of normality. And then, all of a sudden now we're on the eve of restart. So everyone's eagerly waiting and anticipating it, and we're all looking forward to it.
When you got the players back together for that first session, and listen, you said you've been chatting to them on a regular basis, how were they? How did you find they had been affected by what had gone on over the previous 3-4 months?
No, I found them very upbeat. I think they were just delighted to be back in amongst each other and back training and back out in the fresh air with a group of lads, and obviously doing something they love. They all started playing football because they love it. And they were back on the pitches, and as I said, out in the fresh air. Fitness levels were quite good too, because I suppose during the lockdown there probably only a little bit of release was maybe getting out for that one run a day. So fitness levels were pretty forward, and we were sort of pleasantly surprised with those. But as I said, they're only a bit of release during them sort of dark times, and the lockdown was getting out for a run and getting a bit of fresh air to them. So found them upbeat, obviously delighted to be back. We had a real short window. We're only back a month or so after being off for nigh on over 3 months, so not ideal, but I think everyone's just appreciating being back. And as I said, they can see how quick it can be turned upside down. Your life and your profession and your livelihood can be turned on its head. That's definitely something we've all learned in the last few months.
I know from talking to some other League of Ireland managers on the show over the last few months, when there was so much up in the air as to when the game and when the league would return in this country, that they were concerned about not just obviously their own livelihoods, but as to what players will be thinking about their futures within Irish football and whether it was sustainable, particularly if football didn't return until March, and even with the situation we have where it's behind closed doors by and large, and is going to be, it seems, with the way numbers are going for the foreseeable future, and also a much shortened season. Have you noticed any change? Have you had conversations with players about their futures and how things might change going forward?
No, we haven't, to be honest. I think, as I said, it's mainly been just back to football, back on the training pitch. We've probably not thought that far ahead. I think everyone's just looking at the here and now, and we're going back into a season, as you said, it's been cut short, and basically from the get-go you're in a sprint finish. So no, there's been none of that type of talk. I think it's not just football that's obviously in turmoil or very uncertain. It's all across the board, every sector of life, and every other sort of profession and jobs, all across the board. It's not just an isolated football thing. So I think everyone is just, as I said, is just appreciating being back out on the training pitch. And we'll see how the next few months go. Obviously the numbers today, I just saw them an hour or two ago, aren't too healthy or a little bit worrying. So I think we just have to savour the day and see where it takes us. I don't think this minute in time life you can plan too far ahead.
No, that's for sure. So football is back tomorrow night. We'll get on to your nice return against Dundalk tomorrow evening. But what they've come back with this 18-game season, so it's going to be this mad rush as teams fight for a title or for European football. Are you satisfied with an 18-game season? I guess by the way you're talking, you're just happy to have football back. But is it a fair and proper way to see out the season in such a rushed fashion?
Look, ideally you would say no, but as you said, we're just delighted to be back. But ideally you'd say an 18-game season, half of what the original sort of calendar was meant to be, you would say no. But look, these aren't normal times, and at the minute my mindset is take what you're given. We're just happy to be back. we're getting some resemblance or remnants of a league, and we're just delighted to be part of it. But any other year, if something was put forward to you at the beginning of the season saying the league's going to be an 18-game season, you'd probably say, that's very much on the short side, and you wouldn't be totally satisfied with it. But as I said, you take what you're given now in the times we're living in at the moment. So I'm just mainly focused on the positive, and that we're back out in the training pitch, and we're back the players are back playing the game they love, and we're back coaching and helping the individuals in the game we love. So that's the way I like to focus on it.
I'm sure you were kept busy during the lockdown with a young daughter and all that. But in terms of your footballing work, were you able to spend much time thinking about what type of coach, what type of manager you're going to be? Because you probably never really had any period out of the game at all, from being a player, going straight in with Dundalk in a backroom role, and then getting the St. Pat's job almost a year ago at this stage. You probably haven't really had time to think about what sort of coach you're going to be. What did you do during that break?
Yeah, exactly. I think you hit the nail on the head. I managed to take stock. We were 4 games into the season. Managed to sort of take a step back, look at everything, whereas you wouldn't be able to afford to do that if the season was continuing, just be hit with games and training sessions and preparing for the next game. So obviously the extended break, you could take stock, have a look back, what you could have improved on maybe in pre-season, what you could have improved on in the first 4 games, and then devise a plan going forward. So from that point of view, I do definitely think sort of it's probably improved me as a coach and a manager. As you said, you can little sort of bits yourself you can improve on. Look, ultimately I'm at the start of hopefully what's a long coaching and managerial journey, so I have a lot to learn. I'm still very much a novice, but it did give me that opportunity to take stock of the first few games of the pre-season just gone, and definitely areas that we can improve on as a coaching staff, and lots of things that probably we can implement and share with the players.
You obviously worked under numerous coaches throughout your playing career, from Stephen Kenny to Michael O'Neill, to likes of Paul Doolan, Pat Fenlon. Are they figures that you can pick up the phone to and call for a little bit of advice? Is that something you've done since you decided to become a manager?
Yeah, well, obviously I have a very close relationship with Stephen Kenny, so I talk to him on quite a regular basis. Obviously, I'm fully aware that he's very busy at the minute as well with the first games coming up in September. But we do manage to chat. We just spoke there at the weekend, so we talk quite regularly. And he'd be the one, I suppose, that I would talk about different things with. Probably stuff now that we might have bumped heads with when I was a player.
Yeah.
Seemed pretty much black and white to me in the dressing room as a player, and then when you get the other side of the fence, you realise what his thought process was behind in different instances. So it's been a big learning curve in that way too. There's a lot more to management. It's easy sort of as a player saying you should have done this, or why didn't you say that to such and such, but as a manager you got to think of a lot more things around it.
Because the sense I got from talking to you from time to time about Stephen was that you found it difficult to explain what made him so good in terms of his man management in particular, that he just had something on the training pitch that you always left it feeling better. And when you went into a game, he was in the dressing room able to give you something that you felt incredibly confident. With the conversations you're having now as a manager with him, have you a better understanding of how he actually did it?
No, I think that's just Stephen. He's just unique in that regard. I don't think you can sort of copy and paste that. It's just a natural sort of instinct he has. You're right. He definitely did give confidence to a lot of lads, and over the span of 6 or 7 years, he would have a lot of lads there would have been a big enough turnover at Dundalk, and but even the boys that maybe would have left a little bit prematurely wouldn't have a bad word to say about Stephen, and would still very much be fond of him. Not often you get that in a manager. Usually, if a player leaves and under a manager's guidance, that player wouldn't be the manager's biggest fan. But Stephen just had a way with him where, pretty much to a man, I think everyone that played under him at Dundalk would only have positive things to say. So. He's just had that unique ability to get everyone playing for him, even if you played 10 minutes in 10 games or you're never present. He still felt very much as important as the next man. So just a unique way he had. I don't know if it's something you can teach or something you can learn, but he just had that way about him that I think people wanted to play for him and people wanted to impress him.
I guess something you have in common as well is that you both got into management at a very young age. He was obviously even younger again. What was he, 27, 28 when he started out? But like you going into a dressing room as a manager at 33, 34 and making sure that you can command the respect of that dressing room, and probably a couple of players in that dressing room being older than you. Is that something you discussed with him as to how you make sure that despite the lack of experience that, and maybe the relationships you have, particularly with someone, say, like Robbie Benson, who you would have been a teammate with for so long, that you were able to get that right balance of, okay, we have this connection and there's a reason why I wanted you at the club, but I am now the manager. I'm the one whose head is on the block.
Yeah, look, I think at Dundalk, I was pretty used to sort of speaking in front of groups and, speaking in front of a group of players. That wouldn't be a thing that would ever bother me. I think, you got to win players over. Obviously, the first day or so, you have a chat with them, but over time, you got to win players over with your work on the training ground. You can't wing it, especially now. There's so much sort of video analysis, data, different systems. Players, they pick up on all this. There's so much open to them that you can't come in and just wing it and sort of bluff them. So, it's up to you to win them over with your ideas. You have to show them, I suppose, that you know what you're talking about ultimately. And that's I back myself to do that when it comes to football. So, that sort of stuff, like trying to win the respect of the players over, etc. I wouldn't spend too long thinking about that. It's just a case of being yourself. And ultimately, I suppose you're going to be judged on results. But when you go into a dressing room or that, I'd have no qualms in talking about football in front of a group of lads, and gradually over time, if your results back you up, they buy more and more into it, and then hopefully you're on to a bit of a winner.
You've made a few signings over the last week or so. You brought in Georgie Kelly on loan from Dundalk, and then a double signing this week. Jordan Gibson and David Titoff have joined. Gibson left Bradford recently. He's a 22-year-old winger, while Titoff is a defender who had 5 years with Brentford in the Championship. He's played under-21 at international level with Latvia, and obviously Brentford are in the playoff final, so they've had an ever-increasing standard at the club. Players like Gibson and Titoff then, how do you go about scouting those players? Are you putting your trust in agents that you trust and the videos you've watched, or how does that process happen?
Yeah, it's a mixture of everything. It's agents, and then obviously you have different contacts throughout your career, which helps, that, might put you in touch with players, etc. But ultimately, you have to do your work. Then you have to go and watch videos of the players if you can get over. Obviously, you can't now, but with previous signings I made in the off-season, went over to Scotland, went over to England and watched them. You have to put in the groundwork and go over it. Like nothing beats watching it live. Watching a player live, you can pick up on little intricacies that you might be able to see on an iPad. But obviously, the world we live in now, we have to you couldn't really fly out anywhere. So you have to rely on videos, and you just got to do your due diligence. Obviously, do background checks of what they're like as boys first and foremost. Are they good people? And then see them as players and see if they fit into the division you have and the style of play you want to bring to the club. So that's pretty much the way it works. It's a mixture of all sorts. You could get a player by any sort of means, contacts you've had in the past, agents, etc. But there's no way we'd be signing any players blind, that's for sure.
Yeah. Somebody the likes of Jordan Gibson then, who's left Bradford, who were in League Two and, spent some time on loan at Stevenage, and I know he was at Rangers when he was a younger player, but is the League of Ireland, do you find, is it an easy sell for players that are playing in and around League Two, or is there still a difficulty? Is there an opinion in England that they're stepping back if they come to Ireland?
Look, I think, since we keep going back to sort of COVID, I think the mentality will change a little bit, because I think it's swung again, rather than there's going to be plenty of players sort of out of contract now, with clubs trying to, thin down their squads and obviously their budget. So players, are going to have to look outside the box. Ultimately, there's probably a little bit of ignorance around the League of Ireland with English players and Scottish players, etc. They don't have any Irish ties. They've brought up in English and Scottish systems, and they wouldn't be looking around to see what the results are, what the scores are in the League of Ireland, etc. So you got to fill them in.
So what are you saying to him when you're making the call?
You're discussing where you are. You're discussing trying to probably make the level, describe the level to them that would be relevant to them. So you're trying to describe what it would be like in comparison to English football, or if you're trying to sign a Scottish player, Scottish football. And ultimately, you're telling them there's very good players in this league, and there's very good teams in this league, and there's a lot of players that are going back and forth from the league, and there's a lot of clubs coming to watch players in this league and signing them from the League of Ireland. And you're telling them the plan you have for the club. And, you know, European football too. A lot of these lads that just stay in England and Scotland wouldn't sniff playing European football, but that's an avenue the League of Ireland clubs have. If you're ambitious and you want to qualify for Europe, etc., you can open that avenue for them as well.
When the season stopped, Pat's one of the teams that had played 4 games, and it was 2 wins, 2 draws, which means with the Flying Stars, Rovers made 9 points behind Shamrock Rovers, 6 behind Dundalk, but only 3 points behind Bohemians in third with that game in hand. The fact that it's a shortened season, is that had to change your ambitions, your goals for what you can do this season, or is it very much where it was back January, February when you got together for pre-season?
Yeah, to be honest, we never really had a big goal. It was just about improving on last year, you know, improving individually, and very big on when you come out onto the training pitch, make sure if it's 75 or 90 minutes later that you're leaving out the other side of the training pitch a better player. I'm big on that. You know, every time you train, you leave the training pitch a better player, you leave the training pitch a better unit, better team. And, you know, if you do that and work hard every day in training, I know it sounds a little bit boring, but it's definitely the sort of mantra I use. The results and the performances will take care of itself, and then we'll see where we are come the end of the season. But that's where we're at. We want to improve. There was a huge turnover of players at the end of last season to the start of this season, so it's never going to be a case of where everything will go swimmingly and everyone will be gelling. You know, players need to know each other's games. It was a new bunch together, so I knew it was going to be sort of maybe a little bit of a topsy-turvy start. And you know, the sort of pandemic hasn't helped that. We're back over a month or so, but definitely feel we're in a little bit of a better place post-COVID than pre-COVID. So, you know, it's not ideal having to come up against 2 teams Friday, Monday, that probably have been back a month earlier than yet with 2 months preparation. We've had to balance the window of, you know, trying to get lots of work into our boys over a 4-week window, but not go too far the other side and then have players break down. So it's been a tricky balancing act. And then obviously with such a busy schedule, the first 16 days, I think we have 5 games, which, you know, is pretty hectic for a group of players and a club that haven't played in 3 or 4 months. Again, probably thought the fixtures could have been maybe divvied out a little bit better than that and let players condition themselves and their body get up to speed maybe, and then maybe you could fire midweek games at them rather than doing it straight off the bat. I don't think that's fair on players.
Yeah, it is going to be very, very tough. And as you say, because there was at one stage the expectation of this 4-team tournament for certain clubs, they were allowed back into training. Well, was it a full 4 weeks earlier? So, like, having that, and also we're talking about the clubs that were the most successful last season to start with. It does feel as though you're a little bit on the back foot coming into this. And Dundalk away, first night back, is not the ideal scenario.
Yeah, look, ultimately you wouldn't begrudge the clubs being back at that time, because ultimately they were focused on, they were looking ahead to European fixtures, and fair play to them for being in Europe. It's just that probably when our league got the restart and then they said you have 4 weeks basically till the first game of the season, probably not ideal, but it's the times we live in. Dundalk away, as you said, probably been the most dominant. Well, there's no doubt they've been the most dominant team over the past 6 or 7 years. Doesn't get much tougher than that, but it's the games you want to play in as a player. It's the games you want to manage in coaching as the coaching staff. You want to come up against the best and see how you do against the best and pitch your wits.
Does it take a bit of getting used to that you are no longer part of the best? That you're stepping down a little bit to St. Patrick's Athletic, a club that historically have always enjoyed success, but it's a very different role. And in Dundalk, because of what you achieved in Europe and because of the resources that were available, that you were able to set the standard, that you had to sort of step out of that level and start to rebuild all over again. I'm sure the challenge of that was part of the reason for going to Pats and the excitement of that. But is there also a party that goes, oh, God, I wish I had a little bit of what those guys had?
No, not at all. You know, St. Pat's are a huge club. Like Dundalk didn't start at top of the tree when I joined first, and when Stephen took over first. That was at a very low ebb, Dundalk, and we managed to build it up to what it is now, probably. So St. Pat's, it's a huge club. It's one of the biggest clubs in Ireland with tradition and history. So the way I was looking at it, as we talked about earlier, a player just retired at my age, being offered the chance to go into St. Patrick's Athletic, such a huge club with massive tradition, and people like Brian Kerr managed, Pat Dolan managed the club. It was a no-brainer for me. In no way did I think it was a step down or anything. And if anything, it was a step up in the sense of, going into a more prominent role at such a big club that, it's a huge opportunity. And as you said, one I'm really excited about and relishing.
Yeah, and I know you can tell the players that, it's not necessarily always about the results, that you just want them to become better players day in, day out. When you're talking to those above, is there a master plan? Obviously, you mentioned Dundalk. That would be the ideal scenario, and what Stephen Kenny achieved and what he brought Dundalk to. Have you a time limit in your mind as to how long it would take Pats to get back to the very top?
No, not particularly. Not a specific time limit. Look, I'm not silly. I know it's a results-based business. I can't be sitting here in a year's time and saying we're playing not bad and we're not picking up results. It's all about results. But as I said to the players today, you do your business right. You're not going to get results every night. You're not going to play well every night. But there's a way of doing it. So you do your business right over the course of time. You'll get your rewards. You'll get rewarded in this game. So, that's definitely a sort of mantra that I'd follow as well. You do your business right. You work hard. You'll get rewarded over a course of time. So that's sort of where I'm at the minute. Just trying to assemble as good a squad and as good a group of people as I can and see where that takes us. I'm under no illusions in the sense you probably have two big clubs at the minute with a lot of resources behind them in Shamrock Rovers and Dundalk. They're this benchmark for the rest of the league to get that, and we're part of the chase and pack. Hopefully that we throw ourselves in amongst the mix over the next couple of years that we'll be up amongst it.
We were just saying earlier about watching some of the games in GAA over the last couple of weeks, and how when there isn't that fake crowd noise, you can hear absolutely everything that's said. You're going to have to be watching your language tomorrow night when you're live on the stream. Yeah,
definitely. I just read that earlier as well. Players were warned to watch their language, etc.
Anything about managers, or are you just...
I think we're alone to ourselves. No, obviously you have a responsibility. I don't think my parents would be too happy if they're watching the game on telly and they hear me on the sideline effing and blind. And I don't think my mother especially would be too happy about that. So, look, it's all about keeping control and that and still getting your point across. So, it's definitely something we're probably going to have to look at in the sense of things that wouldn't be picked up on a normal televised game with a crowd there, etc. Yeah. It's going to be probably a little bit eerily silent and very much like a training session in regards what the people will be tuning in to watch. It'll be two teams, and that's pretty much it. You'll be able to hear everything, and it might be also a good insight into people watching to probably hear what goes on down around pitch side, etc. And players giving instructions and also sidelines. So it could be a good insight into that.
Have you spoken to the players about that, about what the atmosphere will be like, that albeit it might feel like a training session or a pre-season game, that actually this is the real deal and you need to approach it like that?
Yeah, we've spoken a lot about you have to create your own energy and intensity, same in training, same in pre-season games, a few we've played there. Just there, you've got to create your own energy and intensity and not be relying on crowds maybe to get you going. So, we've spoken about that. You got to sort of, as I said, create your own energy and intensity, and there'll be no excuses in that front. It'll be a little bit different, but don't think there'll be anyone pointing fingers that if we don't get good results because there's a lack of crowd. Obviously, we'd love to have our supporters at Richmond Park. We'd love to have them at Oriel Park tomorrow, but it's just not to be. But as I said, as a player, you got to be fully professional. The job in hand doesn't change. You're going out to win 3 points, and hopefully you keep doing that between now and the end of the season. When the crowds do come back, whenever that may be, you have a lot of things to play for.
Yeah, here's hoping. Well, the very best of luck with it, Stephen. Do you get a call from the parents after they've been watching on the stream, do you think, tomorrow night? Like, is there a lot of advice after the game as to, well, you might want to drop that lad for the next game? Is there a lot of feedback on your managerial style?
I think they'll stay clear. If the result's not good, they'll stay clear, I think. But, if it's a positive result, I'm sure they'll be on and happy out.
Yeah, well, here's hoping. Stephen, best of luck.
Lovely. Thanks, Nathan. Thank you.
Stephen O'Donnell there, St Patrick's athletic manager. They're away to Dundalk tomorrow night as the League of Ireland returns. Tonight in the playoff semi-final second leg, still Cardiff leading Fulham 2-1 on the night, but Fulham 3-2 up on aggregate. There are 8 minutes left in that one at Craven Cottage. Quick break and then we're talking to Dan McDonnell.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power. As potent as Rashford and Fernandes. Post-lockdown. Gamble responsibly. See www.louis.net.
Back on track with Bobby Kerr.
On this week's podcast, we continue to find out how businesses have coped, how some have thrived, and how industries are adapting in the new COVID world. This week, it's all about agriculture and farming. I'm joined by IFA President Tim Cullinan, Pat O'Toole of the Irish Farmers Journal, and economist Jim Power.
Back on track with Bobby Kerr. A new podcast from News Talk.
Thanks to Bank of Ireland.
Listen and subscribe to the podcast now at newstalk.com or on the News Talk app.
Forward. It's the one move we're all ready to take. And at the Audi Moving Forward sales event, we're ready to help you on that journey. All Audi dealerships are now open, with tailored solutions to suit your individual needs, like the Audi A6 Saloon, with PCP finance from only €499 per month. Now is the time to make an appointment. Now is the time to start moving forward. Audi. Vorsprung durch Technik. Finance provided by way of hire purchase agreement from Volkswagen Financial Services Ireland, subject to lending criteria, terms and conditions apply. Visit audi.ie/A6 2020 for further information.
With the An Post Money app, you can open a current account from the comfort of your couch, as well as earn money back into your account when you shop with any of our partners. So far, our customers have earned over €1 million, because when it comes to your money, you deserve more than a bank. Download the An Post Money app or visit your local post office today. An Post Money current account. Money back is based on spend with selected money back partners. A monthly maintenance fee applies. See onpost.com. Terms and conditions apply. An Post is authorised by the Minister for Finance to provide payment services and is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland in the provision of such services.
For more than 20 years, GS Medical has been supporting the healthcare industry. With PPE now becoming part of all our daily lives, GS Medical is continuing to support both the public and SMEs with our medical-grade PPE range. With surgical face masks from 40 cent and face shields from €2.90, we offer medical-grade quality products at exceptional prices. Order direct from our website at gsmedical.ie. GS Medical. Protect those that matter. Terms and conditions apply.
Discover the latest in Dyson hair care technology at Harvey Norman. Say goodbye to excessive heat and hello to enhanced styling with the new Dyson Corral hair straightener, available now at Harvey Norman. Built with flexing manganese copper alloy plates, invented to shape and gather hair to create the same style, but with less reliance on heat. Perfect for smooth, shiny and straight hair results, with or without a cord. Now €499. Shop online today or safely in our spacious stores. Harvey Norman, your Dyson specialists.
Go!
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power. We love the beautiful game more than Olivier Giroud loves the near post. Gamble responsibly. See www.net.
You're welcome back. Dan McDonnell from the Irish Independent is with us. Evening, Dan.
Evening, Nathan.
You know, we did wonder how different football will be when it returns, yet then you turn on a championship playoff semi-final and there's 5 minutes left and there's a Fulham player sprinting clear, followed desperately by 3 blue Cardiff jerseys, knowing that this is their final chance. And you just know from watching it that this is a playoff semi-final. There's that level of desperation from both sides to do the right thing. It's pretty much exactly like last night's semi-final. So Fulham, by the way, 2-1 down to Cardiff on the night, but 3-2 up in aggregate, 4 minutes left.
The end of the championship season has definitely challenged the theory that football without fans is like dramatically different. I mean, I still do believe that it is ultimately, but when the stakes, I guess it proves that when the stakes are like as high as they can be, and like promotion to the Premier League is that really those games towards the end between West Brom and Brentford trying to throw away promotion to the sort of chaotic nature of the playoffs. It's been great, you know. It's sort of it reminds you that we when we can still see some thrilling drama with a degree of normality about it, even if some of the other games maybe have been a bit stranger.
Well, that's it, and I guess that's the hope for the League of Ireland, that everything is obviously very much in the balance, so every game still matters when it resumes tomorrow night. And likewise, when the Premier League does resume, it'll be a very different experience in some ways to what we've just seen, where there were so many matches that didn't matter. Where actually, come the start of September, suddenly every game Liverpool play matters, every game Manchester United play matters, every game Manchester City play matters. And it is a slightly different viewing experience to what we've seen a little bit too much of over the last 6 weeks. Excuse me if I'm distracted slightly while we're talking, Dan, from watching the game, just in case something does happen and I have to shout.
I appreciate that. I won't be offended. The long answers leave you the scope for it, you know. But it is true though. But isn't it funny? I think like people are quite adaptable. Like players are quite adaptable. That whatever about the early confusion, it was striking in the Premier League early, in the Bundesliga early, actually, how low scoring a lot of the early games were, and the first half goals were like non-existent, or certainly thin on the ground. And I'd be interested to see, what the impact is, say, with the league here, where, okay, the crowds are smaller than the Premier League and the Bundesliga, but you could nearly argue that they have the potential to have a bigger impact because they're right in your face, and you would really miss them in some grounds, like there's some places where I think the experience is very different minus fans compared to maybe a Premier League venue where you still have that pristine stadium and they're pumping in some of the noise or whatever it might be. I think, it's going to be disorientating in some of the places compared to what the normal experience is there. So we'll see, because like as you mentioned, it's correct. Like the stakes are so high that you would think, come the end of it, it'll be normal levels of pressure. But maybe in these early weeks, you do expect that there might be a couple of sort of odd games that probably affected by, I don't know, thinking of somewhere like Finn Park or even Oriel Park or wherever, it's a really different arena with no one in it.
Yeah, and that title battle that we expected, whether it was a 36-game season or an 18-game season, it is going to be Dundalk and Shamrock Rovers. And because Shamrock Rovers are 5 out of 5 and Dundalk have just that one defeat to Shamrock Rovers, it is going to feel like this sort of match play scenario between now and the end of the season. So Dundalk are first up tomorrow night and they've got to deliver, because if they don't, suddenly there's an opportunity for Shamrock Rovers to potentially move 5-6 points clear, and there's only 12 games left.
Yeah, it's true. And because of the streaming experiment as well, it's a bit like the Project Restart, that they're not going to be playing at the same time. Probably, they play obviously each other once more, and then maybe the last week or two of the season. But otherwise, all of their games are going to be separate. So they're going to go into the game knowing what they need to do depending on this match play scenario that you're talking about. So like it's going to be very different. Like it's a different league where we normally have these 5 games on a Friday night and 5 on a Monday, and you come in after and you hear what's happened or whatever. It is now going to be a more sense of occasion around some of the games actually, and like from one hand, from say a media general fan point of view, it will be good. Like there will be a sustained weekend, but obviously I am still a bit like, and I was just writing about this for tomorrow, that there's a small bit of apprehension about how it's going to go behind closed doors or with restricted crowds, purely because so much of the selling point of our league is the atmosphere and the crowds and the experience. And this is going to like place a lot of scrutiny on the product. And what we have at the moment is, 2 very strong teams at the top of the league, and maybe question marks about the strength of the chasing pack. So, and often, even with TV games and stuff like that, Dundalk will be picked, or Shamrock Rovers will be picked, or marquee games will be picked. Whereas now, we're going to see live games if you have the streaming package, and maybe in TV, games that you wouldn't necessarily see, and you're thinking, okay, how good is this? What can we learn from this? And I think that's going to be part of it now as well, that it's really puts a lot of pressure on the football entertainment value, because often it's the other variables around the match night that really enhance it actually in our league. And now it's very much like, well, how good are these teams? Yeah. And that's going to be a question mark, I think.
Just on the streaming then, so every game is obviously available to stream, and Declan McBennett, the head of RT Sport, said there was no excuses now, that this is the opportunity that maybe the League of Ireland has spoken about for a long time, not in ideal circumstances, but what is the true value? If you were to go with a streaming service, how many people would take it up? Has there been any sense of whether it's been a success or not?
they put out a league table of people, based on fans, but I don't think they're releasing figures. I'm not expecting them to. I think that table is independent of, say, season ticket holders at clubs who are getting them for free. And like some clubs have quite a large amount of season ticket holders. So, I mean, if every season ticket holder, every club takes it up, like you will have like reasonable sized viewership. But it's the big thing is like what's going on with the actual casual buyers and the floaters. And I don't know. The league's a funny one with this. The first division clubs were unhappy over streaming stuff this week, that they basically were told that they couldn't charge for streams of their games, even though like every county board in the country is charging for games at some level. And clearly it's tied in with maybe they want to focus on selling the Watch LOI brand and that's it. And you hear a bit of chat of, well, figures mightn't be that good but some of that is idle talk. And I also think as well, a lot of people might leave it until, the last minute, or, there is an option as well to buy game by game. And it might well be that the floating fan, mightn't necessarily pay that 55 quid, even though it's great value, in my opinion. It's amazingly good value if you're going to watch all the games. But it may well be that people suddenly hear how things go, the streaming is decent quality, and suddenly on a Sunday at 5 o'clock, Cork are playing Bows, suddenly decide to pay the $5 because it's not a good weather, and this is the only game that might be on. Because I think with the opportunity aspect, it's because with the exception of the Champions League and Europa League games, which are obviously massive games, but they're spread out. And the Premier League isn't there, and Inter-County GEA isn't there. So with the staggering of the fixtures, there's going to be a space in the calendar there that doesn't really exist at any time of the year for the League of Ireland, really. And that's the opportunity. I think the no excuses comes from, well, if this doesn't get people to take up now, as I see you reacting to something dramatic, Nathan, if people don't take it up now with this window there is an element of, well, what do they need to be interested if there's nothing else on at the moment?
Championship playoffs are on right now.
Yeah, they're on like tomorrow night at 5:45 when Derry are playing Sligo. But I can't see this game, so tell me what's after happening.
Well, we're in the 95th minute and Cardiff go on the attack, long diagonal ball from deep, headed into the area, and first time volley on the angle, and would have been one of the great goals in the playoff, and it flies about half a yard over the top of the crossbar. So close for Cardiff, and that may well be that. They're into the final seconds, and it looked, not that most listeners will care, there's never been a playoff set of games that football journalists have been more biased towards two teams than everybody hoping Fulham and Brentford win. Because the alternative is you're going to Cardiff and Swansea. And having spent a lot of my Sundays travelling to Swansea, everybody wants to go to Brentford and Fulham.
So you're talking about yourself. Everybody here is actually you, and this is just all about you.
Exactly, that's all I'm thinking.
That's essentially your point.
There was wild celebrations when Swansea, and Swansea, lovely place, lovely people, enjoy the odd trip.
Stop patronising them. Stop patronising them, to be fair. Lovely place, lovely people, really good community.
Yeah, championship club.
But Fulham's a nice place to go, you can...
Magnificent.
That
game is over.
Normality, you can have your nice, cosy trips to London if they ever return.
If they ever return. I don't know why I'm bothered.
Doesn't matter.
I'm not going to be seeing any of them, so it really doesn't make any difference. Fulham have won that game on aggregate 3-2. They lost 2-1 on the night, so it is Fulham against Brentford in the playoff final. Let's get on to some of the transfer news and contract news, because there's been a lot going on from the Irish players' point of view today. Aaron Connolly is staying put, unsurprisingly, a new 4-year contract with Brighton.
Yeah, it's not, as I said, unsurprisingly. I mean, there was certainly back in January, February, there was chat that a new contract was on the table. I think, Brighton have a very successful or reasonably successful academy, and I think the players moved through the levels as such. And Jason Malumbi got a new contract recently enough, and I guess he would have probably gone to around the level that Connolly was at now prior to this deal. But obviously once Connolly made the Premier League breakthrough, there's a discussion about a Premier League contract, which is natural enough. And I think there might have been a bit of wrangling and discussions around that, which, I mean, that's just a part of the game now. Everyone else will be doing it, so so why not? And it took a while. There was a feeling that maybe his form had suffered around the time of some of this contract chat, and he was on the bench for a while before the lockdown and had a few injury issues and stuff. And it was quite encouraging, I think, that whatever was going on there and whatever the extent of it really was, that he came back from the break in a good place. You know that he was picked pretty early after the shutdown. He was, he hit a much better sort of, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 games to finish than he did the 8, 9, 10 games prior to it, and scoring on the last day probably just capped it. So. Yeah, I mean, when you consider that at this time 12 months ago, he basically hadn't played senior football at league level. He played the odd cup game. So to go from that to a long-term Premier League deal, it's a pretty successful year, I have to say.
It certainly is. A bumper new contract is what the Irish Independent tells me, Dan. What is a bumper contract for a young lad like Aaron Connolly at 20 years of age? Are we talking 25 grand a week?
I think you probably are. I think you could be talking north of that, potentially, or certainly that ballpark. So, I mean, probably a more successful export from the West than yourself, in terms of earning power.
True.
Like that's the territory you're talking. I mean, this is my point. To some people, I think talk of that kind of money, seems outrageous, but I think young English players in the Premier League and whatnot at various clubs. I mean that's the market rate now.
And that probably, as you say, that's probably just another step up the ladder. That if he can back this up again over the next 4 or 5 months at the start of next season, then you're probably hitting the top of Brighton's ladder, which is probably up around 40 grand a week.
Yeah, and I think, if you're negotiating, you'd be no harm to pitch it at that level and see, because you'll always find an example at a club somewhere else that's doing it. I think this is part of the discussion with Matt Doherty, who, when he got his big Wolves deal last year, obviously he's much older, much more established at his club, but I guess not as established at Premier League level in the sense that he only had one season under his belt, of a real quality. And I think Matt Doherty then, you graduate into a different bracket of the 50 grand a week territory. And I even got the sense from people that Doherty was quite content and could have looked for more nearly if he really wanted, So like I mean, I guess it's a staggering amount of money, but that's the money that goes around the Premier League, So better you have it than I don't know, some agent
owner, or your agent, exactly. So could be a bumper few days for the Galwegians, because Ryan Manning is one of the Irish players been linked with a potential move in the papers today with West Ham. David Moyes, it seems, might be quite interested in bringing Ryan Manning to West Ham, potentially as backup. They obviously have Aaron Cresswell there, who's one of those players constantly linked with a move to a bigger club, but that would be a huge opportunity for Ryan Manning.
Yeah, it would. I think, Manning is... It's not that the jury is out on Manning, because he's had an excellent season, but it's how his conversion that he's made to left full in the last season. And I saw him a couple of times for QPR again when we were able to travel, and it was interesting. He's not, say, electric fast, but he's so good going forward and very technically comfortable going forward that you'd love to see how he would adapt to a Premier League setting. He'd be a different animal to, say, Enda Stevens in terms of who's really raids as a wing back, and Doherty. Manning was a number 10 when he was younger, a real skillful type of player. And QPR have great pace ahead of him in the wide areas, and just it's an interesting one. His standing has risen, and
well, again, like Aaron Connolly, he's had a very good few weeks since the break.
Yeah, exactly. He lost his place temporarily, but I mean he played every game prior to that. But the suggestion was that it would be it would be viewed as a sort of a cheaper bargain option from the Championship. But I can see, with his versatility as well, why he would appeal to people as a squad member. It's just, in some respects, part of me thinks, do you want to see another year of him in the Championship in that position and see where he's at? But you have to move quickly if these opportunities present themselves. And I'm sure that his people, if it does become a real option, you take it.
Troy Parrott then. Troy Parrott, I don't see confirmation of it yet, but since last night it's been widely speculated that he's going to go to Millwall on a season-long loan deal, which for an 18-year-old at Tottenham would seem like a straightforward career move, but we had such high expectations, probably unrealistically high, for Troy Parrott at the start of the season, having featured for Spurs in pre-season and their lack of striking options. A lot of people look at this and think, it just hasn't worked out for him at Spurs. But he is still just 18 and actually getting game time, and you would expect he would get regular game time if things go well at Millwall, is probably what he needs right now.
Yeah, that's a great opportunity for him. it's London. It's not uprooting, dramatically. I think that is a factor. I think that Spurs, want to, they rate him highly, and I think they want to have a degree of control around his movements. And I'm not sure if packing him up and sending him to another part of the country would necessarily have been their preference. You look how Jason Malumbi has fared at Millwall. It's character building. Obviously, again, if fans come back, it's even more character building at Millwall. But
sometimes you can have too much character building.
Yeah, if you're struggling, you'll certainly, you'll sink or swim pretty quickly, I guess. But listen, to me, it ticks every box for him as an option. It's odds against that Jose is possibly even there by the time this season-long loan is completed, and he's not going to be trusted really until he gets that probably season of games, and he's going in at championship level. Like, not every loanee gets to go into a good championship club. Like, that is, Millwall were pushing for the playoffs this year and could have got across the line with a bit more, a couple of points here or there. So, listen, we'll find out a lot about Troy Parrott in the next year, and I think we're looking forward to finding that out.
Yeah, it is, as you say, interesting that they are potentially keeping him in London, because and you do hear at times, bizarre as it may seem, that players, while they may go on loan to a club, may also go back to their regular club for a training session a week or a training session every couple of weeks, so they can actually keep that close an eye on him. That at his age, actually been around the Tottenham setup and the professionalism of that, and probably what they've got him used to since he moved over a couple of years ago, is what he needs as a personality as well, to be kept in within that Tottenham grouping.
Yeah. Like, just from chatting to people who seem to be aware, there seems to be a sense that Spurs really want to mind Parrott, for whatever reason. And maybe they think he needs to mature a bit, and perhaps, sending him again to a different part of the country. Like, I don't think they're just going to send him anywhere. Yeah. And clearly there's obviously a degree of trust where they're sending him at Millwall. I assume there's connections, there's people there. Gary Rowett's the manager. They're obviously happy that, this is the right fit, and it won't have just been, well, they're in for him, let's let him go there. I think there would have been a bit of thought behind it, because there's no doubt that every time you talk to people, they really believe that the ability is there, but clearly you still need a lot to go right for you at this age, and hopefully this is the right step.
All right, Dan, great stuff as always. Talk to you soon.
Cheers, Nathan.
Quick break.
Football on Off the Ball
with Paddy Power. As potent as Rashford and Fernandes. Post-lockdown. Gamble responsibly. See WE.net.
At Specsavers, our stores are now open. So if your hearing or sight isn't quite right, please get in contact. We're doing everything to make sure your safety comes first, from limiting the people in store to disinfecting glasses and test equipment. We'll be wearing protective gear, so if you can't see our friendly faces behind our masks, we promise they're still there.
Specsavers, open with you in mind. Book an appointment online or call your nearest store.
The sky's the limit when you're with Three. We've decided to make the rest of the year a little easier by making our bill pay and broadband plans half price until 2021. And with truly all-you-can-eat data, you can FaceTime forever with the ones you love. Plus, get the amazing Samsung S20 for free when you switch or upgrade today. 3. Make it count. Selected plans only. Standard monthly charge applies from 2021. Up to 24-month contract applies. All-you-can-eat data. ROI only. See 3.ie.
What do you look for in a day trip? Is it long, sandy beaches and rugged coastlines? Is it ancient castles and majestic gardens? Or is it picturesque towns and villages? Fingal has all this and more, right on Dublin's doorstep, but with the breathing room of the countryside. From Malahide to Howth, Portmarnock to Skerries and Castleknock to Swords, there's a world of adventure waiting to be explored. Plan your trip